Welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast to provide legal information and updates to individuals, businesses and business advisors in South Australia. This podcast is brought to you by Mellor Olsson Lawyers, a full-service South Australian law firm. The information, opinions and advice in this podcast are for general information only. In today's episode, we're talking with Mellor Olsson solicitor Mia Chenoweth. Mia is a solicitor at Mellor Olsson Lawyers. Welcome, Mia.
Thanks, Lucie. It's good to be here.
Thanks for joining me. Mia, I wanted to talk to you about Christmas being around the corner and I guess another year almost over. I'd imagine that this can be a particularly stressful time for people who are or have recently gone through a separation.
That's right, Lucie. Christmas can be joyful for some people, but for some families it can be really difficult. Like you said, those families that are separated, contemplating a separation or even going through a separation, particularly if there's children involved as well.
Right. I was hoping that you might be able to provide our listeners with some advice and perhaps some tips to surviving this festive season if you find yourself or someone you know in that particular situation.
Absolutely. My first tip, Lucie, would be to try and reach a mutual agreement with your partner about the care arrangements for the festive season. Who are the children going to be with on the special days? So we're talking about Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day and so on. And try and reach this agreement a few months in advance so you've got time to negotiate with your partner before the craziness of Christmas is upon you.
Yeah. So when we actually start to list the number of special occasions over the festive season, we've got, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, we do have New Year's. There's actually quite an opportunity to share time with the children. Any tips around this?
So my tip around that, Lucie, is just to remember that when you're negotiating the care arrangements with your partner, try and keep the children's best interests at the forefront of your mind. So be reasonable and fair when negotiating, and remember that you and your partner are probably going to have to make some reasonable concessions to ultimately reach an agreement. And the children also might actually have expressed that they want to be somewhere in particular, and if that's reasonable, you can take that into account as well.
It's a really good point, to actually let the children have a voice in this.
Exactly.
So you reach an agreement. Should we be writing this down somewhere?
Absolutely. Everything in writing, and it's really important to document these in, say, something as simple as a text message or email. And it's really important to document them so you have a point of reference of what was agreed and also who had the children when.
Yeah.
And so when you're actually writing these care arrangements out, you can keep in mind that it might suit your family to share each of the special days. So, for example, the children might spend time with mum on Christmas Day until 2 p.m, and then they're handed over to dad for the rest of Christmas Day. Alternatively, it might be more suitable to actually do alternate years so the children have a larger block of time with each parent. So, for example, the children are with mum for the whole Christmas period this year, and then next year they spend the whole Christmas period with dad.
That all sounds extremely practical. What's our next tip?
My next tip, Lucie, would be to try and maintain a positive co-parenting relationship with your partner if you can. This not only benefits you in the long run because it's easier to coordinate with your partner, but most importantly, it benefits the children in the long run as well.
I'd imagine that this can be quite tricky if there's a few Christmas drinks involved.
Absolutely. But it's really important to remember that you don't want to negatively impact your child's relationship or opinion of your partner. And so to do that, try not to argue or discuss the parenting arrangements in front of the children as well. And it's also really important to make sure that you, your family and your friends aren't speaking about the children in a negative manner as well. And remember, if you're behaving in this appropriate manner, it gives you the best chance that your partner's going to reciprocate that behaviour as well.
Good advice. We've heard stories of Christmas being a time where, both parts of, the relationship are showering the children in Christmas gifts and it's just this competition to try and become the favourite. It can be a tempting time to do that. Do you have any advice around how we should manage that?
It's a good point, Lucy, particularly if you haven't finalised the financial matters from your separation. Make sure that you've done a budget so you can actually get through the festive season financially. And if you're sharing bank accounts with your partner still, try and reach an agreement and set some ground rules as to how much each person can access and spend.
And I'm assuming, should we write these down as well?
Absolutely, everything in writing.
Okay. So I imagine if you do end up with the children on these special occasions, and this might be the first time that you're on your own for Christmas as well, or the festive season, there could be a sense of loneliness, I would imagine, a real sense that there has been a separation and you're probably feeling it. Any tips about surviving that particular situation?
What I would say there, Lucy, is if you don't have the children, try and keep yourself busy with things that you enjoy. And if you can, surround yourself with family and friends. Remember, there's things like FaceTime, WhatsApp and other video communication apps that are a great way for staying connected.
Okay, so we've talked about the sharing of the time with the children. We've talked about how we can, manage the gifts, budgets, writing it all down. These are all really practical tips. Any final advice for people out there who are experiencing a separation or have recently been through one during this festive season?
I mean, all of the tips that I've given today, Lucy, are based upon you having some sort of agreeable co-parenting relationship with your partner. That's not always the case. So I remind listeners that if you or the children ever experience harm or threats or feel unsafe, they should contact the police.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Mia from Mellor Olsson for her time. These are extremely helpful tips in what can be a very difficult time in what is usually a very happy time. Mia is actually an experienced family lawyer who provides practical advice around separation, custody and property settlement in a divorce. She works out of our Port Lincoln office and also our Adelaide office. And I want to say thank you very much, Mia.
Welcome.
The information in this podcast is general in nature. For podcast terms and conditions or for further information on Mia, family law and Mellor Olsson, please visit molawyers.com.au.